the character was so unlikable, so unsavory, that I almost didn't audition for it. The show was the practice, and the character's name was William Hinks.
I would have so loved to have extended that look of pain in their faces, that look of horror. It's a thing of beauty, the look on the face of a woman who knows she's about to die.
That's a terrible thing to say. People come to me and say, "You were so scary on Lost," and I want to say, this guy makes Ben Linus look like Mr. Rogers. I was afraid playing the part. I was a little disturbed that I had an instinct for playing characters like that. I never dreamt that I was going to be the villain guy. I never thought there was anything remotely sinister about me. I've always been a comedian, I thought, but it was fun. And I seemed to have an aptitude for it. And of course, that role sets the tone for really, I think, every part I've ever played on television and leads directly to my work on Lost. Meanwhile, back in Hawaii, I had shot several episodes and was having fun, settling into the role, and wondering if they were ever going to let me go home. I missed Carrie, and I really had not brought enough underwear. 3 episodes had turned into 6, and everyone liked me well, and I was getting very comfortable, and I figured, well, sooner or later I'm going to get the script where they'd kill me off. Strangely, I had never discussed the part with a writer or a producer. I had no idea what their intentions were. I would just show up at the appointed time every day and do it. But one day something interesting happened. I was shooting, I think, the 5th episode I was in, and the director comes to me and he says, you know, when you're talking about the leader of the others, you gotta let the audience know that he's like the scariest person in the world. And I said, okay, I can do that. But I said, wouldn't it be interesting if it turned out that I was the leader of the others? And he looked at me with his mouth open for a minute and blinked, and he said, I can't discuss that. And I thought, all right, what's going on here? Have I guessed right? Are they not going to kill me off? Well, as it turned out, they didn't. They changed my character's name and kept me there, and I spent the next 4 years in Hawaii. Hawaii! And that's just how it is. Hawaii was a place I never expected to visit, much less to live there. I had grown up with the impression of it as a sort of made-up place, a vacation destination like Las Vegas, a place where Elvis would make movies. But when you get there, the reality of it turns out to be much more interesting and far more beautiful. This is one of many just breathtaking valleys in the islands. This is Kualoa, I think, where we've sometimes shot on Lost. And you get up in those places and you think, why are we even bothering to film anything? Just put the cameras down and stand here and look at the majesty of this thing. I love the smell of Hawaii. It hits you right when you get off the plane. I love the foreignness of it. I know it's one of the 50 states, but it really feels like you're in another place. And the hospitality there is unparalleled. The physical beauty of the place, as you see, is phenomenal. And it's the perfect backdrop for the action of that particular TV show. I sometimes felt like the island of Oahu was another character in the show. I can look in somebody's window and I can tell if they're watching Lost because of that saturated green jungle in the background, or the saturated blue sea in the background. This is a kind of funny story. Carrie and I were walking around the neighborhood in LA one time, and we walked by a house with a big picture window, and we could see their flat screen TV, and they had Lost on. Moreover, Ben Linus was on the screen. And Carrie said, I'll give you $10 if you go up and rap on it. And I was on my way across the yard when I had this terrible, paranoid, lost-in thought, which was, these people could be armed. Or they could be naked. Or naked and armed. Do I really want to invite a tragic headline in the morning papers by playing around with this? So I didn't go. I didn't go. And don't you know the look on their faces would have been possibly priceless?
Oh my God.
I never expected in my life that I would play a character for so long. Years went by, and I was still Benjamin Linus. It was all Ben, all the time. You stop having to think about it much. You get up in the morning, you go to the studio, you put on the clothes, you put on the blood, and you're good to go. There were times when I began to wonder if I was still acting. It didn't feel like I was acting. What happened to the acting? You know, when you're by yourself on an island for too long, you start to have crazy thoughts like that. I mean, of course, it's a funny idea. And one of my policies is to try to find the humor in things. When you're desperate or pitiful, it's often useful, I think, to see the humor of it, to cast yourself as if this thing is a comedy. I employed that technique with respect to combat on Lost. I was never very comfortable with fighting, and I had to learn to see the humor in the violence on Lost, even though I dreaded it. How I got to be an action player is beyond me. I'm one of the least athletic persons you will ever met, and certainly most likely to be hurt. Of course, I had hacked around in my day on stage with swords and stuff, but I thought when I reached a certain age that, oh, thank God, that's all over. From now on, it's going to be smoking jackets and beards. Au contraire. There I was in the islands, shooting guns, jumping on horses, falling through trapdoors, and taking more than the occasional blow to the head. I'm ready to do that! That's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm not kidding. There was a lot of that. My mom used to tell me that I should be careful because I had a punchable face. Little did I know that she was predicting my television career. Side note, could you tell which one of those hits was a real hit? Let's Yeah, ouch. That sound that you heard, that was the sound of Ian Cusick's fist hitting my head. Let's look at it again in slow motion. When I went down on the hood of the car, I put my hands to my face to make sure that my eyeballs were still. Well, what can you do? I mean, you either cry about it or laugh about it. That was the first take of 4 more hours of work on that particular sequence. Because there was more fighting, and there was throwing on the ground, and there was crawling, and that was tough. So you roll with it. Roll with it. Be prepared. See the humor. This is my mantra. There have been times when I regretted all the detours and delays in my so-called career, but I don't think about it that way anymore. I look back on it now and I see that everything was leading, although gradually, toward a wonderful experience like working on this show, and hopefully toward something unexpected in the future. I'm glad I didn't give up, even though there were times when it seemed hopeless. I'll tell you one last quick story. While I was a grad student, I was asked to be a driver for a famous actor who came to give a speech at our school. As I was driving in with him from the airport, I saw that he was studying me. And eventually he said, "Do you mind if I ask you how old you are?" And I said, "I'm 40. And he said, "And you're a student here?" said, yeah. And he took a beat, and then he said, well, you're a braver man than I am. And to this day, I'm not sure what he meant by that. Did he mean he really thought I was brave to be starting a career so late in life? Or did he really think I was crazy to be starting a career so late in life? It doesn't matter, because I don't think I was either one. It wasn't especially brave, and it wasn't especially crazy. I was just playing the hand I was dealt. I was on my path. I was on my timetable. 10 short years later, I was in a position to work beside this actor. It's not a race, and you don't have to get there first. It just seems like you get there when you get there. Having accepted the unexpected as a constant in my life, the lesson I take from it, if there is any lesson to be had in as fickle a business as show business, is to be patient with yourself, to be patient with the world, to try to be as flexible as you can, and love the thing you do for its own sake. And I'll also see the humor. Because I'll tell you what, we are in a comedy more often than we think. Thank you for your kind attention. We're going to take a couple of minutes right now and move some furniture around so we can do a Q&A. I thought while we did that, you might enjoy looking at a couple of my favorite scenes from that television show.
When you did Gross Indecencies with Oscar Wilde, Ben Brantley, who is a reviewer at the New York Times, a really big reviewer, actually went and saw the play. And he said that Michael Emerson's debut was stunning. And I think all of us can sort of take note that you are stunning as Ben Linus on Lost.
Thank you.
And that part of what's so stunning is just the Shakespearean way in which you approach each part of Ben. You know, you're a school teacher, you're a homicidal maniac, you're a confused man, you know, with Jacob. And so one of the first things that I wanted to ask you about was, you know, how do you make that adjustment in your training to move from a stage play and to move from a stage career to a television and film career that actually takes what you know from the stage onto something like Lost that allows you to have a very large palette? I mean, it was beautiful.
Well, it wasn't like I would try to carry that training along like something that was outside of myself, like a piece of luggage. I was able to make that transition because I am a Shakespearean, because I have that background. It's the way I think about, it's just the way I approach the work. And you know, if you study the classics, you begin to have the attitude that you are a sort of servant or tradesman in service to the text. So your job is to break it open and make it as rich as you can, to help the director and the writer score points. So that's, I approach, whether it's Coriolanus or Lost, I try to tear it apart the same way. I try to think, what would I like to see happen with this?
So when you were doing Lost, I mean, a lot of people actually sent us questions, and one of the things they asked all the time was, did you know what was happening? Because in some ways that seems antithetical to when you get a script, you mine it and you do what you need to do, and then I go and I prepare. So did you know what was happening on Lost, or were you all always in the dark about what the next step was?
Always in the dark, and it was hard at first because I'm so accustomed to doing homework. And with Lost, there was no backstory. There was nothing to work on at home. It was actually better and ultimately freeing to show up on the day and play the scenes straight. If you're playing a character who tells lies or tells versions of the truth, that's not an actable quality anyway. People that are successful liars do not seem in any way different from people that tell the truth. So playing it straight, my job is not to convince you that something underhand is going on. That is a contract between the writers and you, the audience. So the best way for me to get out of the way of that circuitry is to just be simple and straightforward.
When you, I watched some videos